She sat in the front pew at my wedding with a warm smile. People told me how lucky I was to be joining her family. She gave a toast at the reception that made grown women cry. She hugged me in front of 180 guests and whispered 4 words in my ear while the cameras flashed. And I smiled because I knew something she didn't. 16 minutes of GoPro footage, a seam ripper she'd carried in from home, and a husband who had watched that video, set down his glass, and walked to her table with everyone watching. I'm not telling you this because I want you to hate Renee Calloway. I'm telling you because for 3 years, I let her make me feel like I was the problem. And on the day meant to be the happiest of my life, she handed me the one piece of evidence I'd never been able to name. Let me take you back.
If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you. Darius proposed at a place called Cleo's, a small Caribbean spot in Westfield that had been our first date spot. Dim lighting, jerk chicken, a booth in the back corner where the server still remembered us. He didn't get down on one knee in the restaurant because he knew I'd be mortified. He just slid the ring across the table and said, "You already know what I'm asking." I said yes before the ring stopped moving. We drove home with the windows down, mid-October, that particular cool that tells you fall is serious now. I called my mother first. Vivian Cole, 61 years old, retired high school librarian, the woman who raised me to be particular about who I let close. She screamed, full volume. My ear rang for 20 minutes. "Good," she said when she settled down. "He's a solid man. Don't let him be anything less." That is a full speech from Vivian Cole. Then Darius called his mother. Renee Calloway picked up on the first ring. He put her on speaker, grinning at me the way he does when he knows something good is coming. "Mama," he said, "Camille and I just got engaged." 2 full seconds of quiet. Then, well, Renee's voice was flat and smooth, like a table you can't find the edge of. "I guess you've made your decision." No excitement, no congratulations. Not even his name said warmly, just that careful, managed tone, like she was accepting a change to her calendar she hadn't approved. "I just hope you understand what commitment means in this family," she added. "Marriage isn't something you walk into lightly." Darius mouthed, "Sorry" at me. I shook my head. I'd been shaking my head at Renee Calloway for 2.5 years. After he hung up, he squeezed my knee. "She just needs time. She'll get there." I didn't say what I was thinking. That Renee had spent the past year casually mentioning a woman named Brittany Ossie every time Darius and I had any tension. Brittany, daughter of Renee's sorority sister. Brittany, who had the right last name and the right degree, and who Renee had introduced to Darius twice at family gatherings like she was presenting a job offer. Darius had said no each time without explaining why to his mother. That phone call was not a surprise. It was a warning I was too hopeful to hear correctly. 6 weeks before the wedding, I went to find my dress with my best friend, Janelle. Janelle has been my person since the 7th grade. She is the kind of woman who tells you the truth the way a doctor delivers a diagnosis, with care and without softening it enough to be useless. She drove 2 hours when my grandmother died and didn't say a single word the whole drive. She just came. We went to a boutique in Millerton. I'd been looking forward to a morning of just the two of us and a rack of white dresses. We were on the 3rd option when the door opened. Renee walked in. "Marcus mentioned you were here," she said, carrying a coffee from the place down the street. "I thought I'd come offer a fresh eye." Janelle went still beside me. I caught her arm without looking at her. "That's thoughtful of you," I said. "Come on in." She didn't sit. She stood behind me at the mirror and offered commentary on every dress I touched. "That one doesn't flatter the shoulder. This fabric is going to wrinkle by the reception." "You want something with more structure," she said, tilting her head. "Otherwise you look unfinished." I tried on an ivory gown with a V-back, fitted through the bodice. Simple A-line skirt, a hemline that swept just right. When the seamstress fastened the back and I turned to the mirror, something in my chest went quiet, the good kind of quiet. That settled. Certain feeling you only get when you've found the right thing. Renee tilted her head. "It's modest," she said, which is probably smart given the venue. Janelle moved. I stepped between them. "Renee, I found my dress. Thank you for coming." Renee smiled. The kind of smile that ends a sentence without finishing it. "Of course, sweetheart." On the way to the car, Janelle pulled my arm. "She photographed your dress. I saw her do it when you turned away from the mirror. She was texting before we even got to the register. I found out later she sent it to Darius's sister, Nadine, with a message that just said, 'Is this really what she's wearing? I should have paid more attention to that photo.'" 5 weeks before the wedding, my phone rang while I was eating lunch at my desk at work. Our event coordinator at Riverside Hall. "Hi, Camille. I wanted to confirm the updated menu with you, per Mrs. Callaway's instructions. We've moved to a formal plated dinner service. 4 courses. I'm sending the revised pricing now." I set down my fork. Darius and I had planned a southern buffet. Slow-cooked ribs, mac and cheese made from scratch, buttermilk biscuits, a peach cobbler bar for dessert. We had built that menu on purpose. That was us, our people, our table. The revised quote was nearly double what we'd approved. I called Renee from my car. "Did you contact our venue coordinator about the catering?" A pause. "I was trying to help, Camille. That buffet is fine for a backyard, but Riverside Hall is a formal venue. People will notice." I kept my voice level. "This was not your decision to make. I'm his mother. I have a stake in how this event represents our family. Your family, not mine." Another pause. Longer this time. "You're being oversensitive." I hung up. Then I called the venue and reversed everything. When I told the coordinator I was restoring the original menu, she said, "Mrs." Callaway was very firm about the changes. "Are you sure you want to override?" "I'm sure." That evening, Darius called me. He sounded tired. She cried, "Camille." She said nobody appreciates her. She said she was only trying to make things nice. Did she agree to change it back? Silence. "No, Darius," I said. "She doesn't get to redecorate our wedding because she doesn't like what we chose. This is not a negotiation." He knew I was right, but he also spent 20 minutes on the phone with his mother before he agreed to let me handle it. That 20 minutes told me something. I filed it away. The same week, I got an email from our photographer, Tanya Weeks. "I've been shooting weddings for 11 years, she wrote. "I always place a small, wide-angle camera in the bridal suite to catch the getting ready energy. Candid stuff. Brides love it. Want me to set one up for yours?" I wrote back immediately, "Yes, absolutely. That sounds wonderful." I didn't think. Her family has been in this community for 40 years. Camille's people are from where, exactly? Her mother works at a library. That's charming, but it's not what I wanted for my son. She paused. "I've done everything I could. He won't hear me. But mark my words, Sherry. 2 years. I give it 2 years." I stood there with my hand on the fence post. My pulse was in my ears. I could feel the wood grain under my palm. The porch light buzzed. I walked to the door and knocked. Renee came around the corner and stopped when she saw my face. Her mouth opened and closed once. "Hi, Renee. I'm just here for the frames. Reginald said they'd be by the back door." She watched me pick up the bag. She didn't say a word. Neither did I. In my car, I sat for 10 minutes with my hands in my lap, not shaking, just still, holding it. The kind of grief that doesn't make noise because it's been confirmed, not discovered. Because part of you already knew. I didn't tell Darius. Not because I wanted to protect him. Because I was 3 weeks from marrying this man, and I needed to know, before the wedding, whether he would stand with me. And the only way to know that was to stop carrying things for him and wait. 2 days before the wedding, the Callaway backyard. Rehearsal dinner, string lights, about 40 people, a catered spread Renee had spent 2 months planning. Everything coordinated. Linen napkins that matched the flower arrangements, a playlist she'd built herself. A woman who needed to control every surface in every room she entered. After the main course, Renee stood to give a toast. She raised her glass and smiled out at the yard the way a hostess does when she's been waiting all evening for the room to belong to her. She talked about Darius as a boy, his first Little League season, the time he got lost at the county fair and wandered back an hour later eating a funnel cake, completely unbothered. Sweet stories, real ones. The kind that reminded you she did love her son, genuinely. Then she said, and of course we can't forget the friendships that shaped him. Brittany always said Darius was the kind of man who knew who he was. She smiled in my direction, just for a second, just long enough. She wrapped up the toast with, "To Darius, may you always know your way home." The yard applauded. She had not said my name once. Under the table, Janelle's hand found mine. She squeezed once. I raised my glass. I smiled. I ate the cake. I hugged people on the way out the door. When Darius walked me to my car, I said it plainly. Your mother didn't say my name, not one time. He was quiet for a long moment. I know, he said. I noticed, and I'm sorry. I looked at him in the dark outside his parents' house. I need to ask you something before tomorrow. If something happens at this wedding, and I don't mean an argument, I mean something real, will you stand beside me? Not between us, not trying to keep the peace. Beside me. He held my face with both hands. I will, I promise. I drove home holding that promise the whole way. I slept at my mother's house the night before the wedding. My childhood bedroom, yellow walls I'd repainted twice, a window that still didn't seal right in the cold, the photo of me and my grandmother on the dresser. Mama sat on the edge of my bed and braided my hair the way she used to when I was small. Neither of us said much. There wasn't much to say. Before she turned off the light, she smoothed the covers and looked at me. That woman has been testing you for 3 years, she said. Today you find out what the test was actually for. Don't you forget who you are while you're standing in her church. It wasn't her church, but I understood what she meant. Darius called at 11. His voice was soft, almost careful. You okay? I'm ready, I said. That's not the same thing, but it's enough. I know, he said. I know it's not easy. I want you to know I meant what I said tonight. If anything happens tomorrow, I'm there, right there. I believe you, I said. Just don't make me need it. He was quiet. Then, I hope you don't. But if you do. I fell asleep thinking about Tanya's camera in the bridal suite. She had confirmed it in her final timeline email. A wide angle set in the corner, capturing the whole room. I'd completely forgotten about it. In less than 14 hours, I would be very glad I hadn't. Riverside Hall, bridal suite. 10 in the morning. High ceilings, tall windows looking out over the garden, a vanity table along one wall, and my dress hanging on a padded rack near the closet. The room smelled like Janelle's perfume and the gardenias somebody had tucked into the centerpiece on the side table. Tanya arrived first. She set up her main kit, then pulled out a small, wide-angle camera from her bag and placed it on a shelf in the corner, angled toward the vanity and the dress rack. This is your behind-the-scenes magic, she said. You won't even notice it. I nodded. I was watching my cousin Yolanda try to open a bottle of Prosecco with a butter knife. By 9:30, the room was full. Janelle, my cousins Yolanda and Simone, the hair and makeup team. Somebody had put a playlist on that was exactly right. That kind of joy that makes a room feel like a celebration before the celebration. At 10:15, a knock at the door. Renee walked in, wearing a mauve, mother of the groom suit, pearl earrings, hair done. She was carrying a small box. I brought you something, she said. Something old for your something old. She opened the box. Inside, a pair of drop earrings, garnet stones, gold setting, old enough to be an heirloom. These were my grandmother's, she said. I want you to have them today. Janelle watched from across the room. I could feel her watching. Renee clasped the earrings on me herself. Her hands were cool against my neck. They look beautiful, she said softly. You look beautiful. I thanked her. I meant it. And for one real moment, I thought maybe this was the shift. Maybe this was Renee deciding to try. She stayed, sat on the love seat, and watched me get ready. When the makeup artist finished, Renee came close and touched the sleeve of my dress where it hung on the rack. "The detailing is exquisite," she said quietly. I smiled. "I know. I loved it the moment I tried it." She smiled back, and I believed her. That was the last time I believed her without proof. At 10:40, Tanya checked the light outside and turned to the room. "The garden light is perfect right now. If we move now, we'll get the bridal portraits in the best sun before noon changes it." I was already in my dress, laced, zipped, train pinned. We'd done it early to make sure everything felt right before the ceremony. Renee shifted on the love seat and rubbed her knee. "You girls go ahead. I tweaked something in yoga last week. I'll stay here and make sure nothing gets disturbed." Janelle glanced at me for a half second. "Sure, Renee," I said. "We'll be back in 20 minutes. We filed down the hall and out the side door to the garden. Tanya led us to the stone wall along the rose beds. The light was everything she said it would be. Behind us, the bridal suite door clicked shut. What the camera saw while we were gone, Renee stood up from the love seat. No limp, no favored leg. She walked to the suite door, opened it 2 inches, and listened. Footsteps fading down the hall. Then she closed it and turned back into the room. She went to her bag on the chair. Not her clutch, her larger tote. She reached in and pulled out a small tool, thin-handled, sharp-pointed, a seam ripper, the kind you'd find in any sewing kit, except she hadn't found it this morning. She'd packed it from home. She walked to my dress on the rack. She lifted the back panel of the skirt, found the interior seam along the lower bodice, and began to work. Precise, quiet strokes. Not random. She knew exactly where to place the blade. The lining that gave the bodice its structure ran along the lower back and connected at the waist. She cut it in 3 sections, deliberate and slow, the kind of cuts that look like nothing from the outside. She worked for 5 minutes. Then she returned the seam ripper to her bag, settled back on the love seat, and picked up her phone. When we came back from the garden, she looked up from her phone and smiled. "Everything's perfect," she said. "I didn't touch a thing." We didn't see anything wrong. The dress felt right. The zipper was fine. Tanya had taken a shot of me and Janelle mid-laugh in the garden with the roses behind us that I could tell was going to be one of my favorites. At 12:30, Janelle helped me step back into the gown for the final time. She did up the back. I smoothed the skirt. Something felt slightly different in the lower bodice, a faint looseness. I thought it was nerves. My hands were not quite steady. My mother was waiting in the hall with her hands pressed together and her eyes already watering. The church held about 180 people, stained glass throwing color across the pews, white calla lilies on every row end. My grandmother's church, where she'd married my grandfather 60 years ago. My mother walked me down the aisle. Darius was standing at the altar with red eyes and a smile that I would remember when I was old. We said our vows. We kissed. The church erupted. I was the happiest I had ever been. I had no idea what was already loose inside the dress I was wearing. Renee sat in the second row, smiling the smile of a woman who was waiting for something. The reception was at a hall connected to the venue. Round tables, ivory linens, candles inside glass holders that threw warm light up the walls. The kind of room that looks like something you planned for a long time, which we had. I had started to feel the dress differently by cocktail hour. Not uncomfortable, just off. Like something inside wasn't holding the way it should. I kept pressing my hand to my lower back out of habit. Janelle appeared at my elbow. She looked at where my hand was. "Is it the dress?" "Just nerves," I said. She nodded, but she stayed closer to me after that. Tanya was at a side table near the entrance backing up her memory cards to her laptop. Standard workflow. I'd seen her do it at other events. I didn't think about it. She had a reception to shoot. The DJ called us for the first dance. Darius took my hand and led me to the center of the floor. The song was Etta James because his grandmother had loved her, and we both felt she deserved to be there. The room formed a soft circle, phones up, candles flickering. We started to sway. His hand rested on my lower back. Then he turned me once, slowly, and I felt it. A sharp pull across the waist, the interior seam releasing another inch. The whole lower section of the bodice's lining went loose in one motion. Not loud, just a sensation, like something letting go. I pressed my palm to my back. "You okay?" he murmured. "Something's wrong with the dress. Go slow." We finished the dance barely moving, more of a held embrace than a waltz. I kept the smile on my face and moved my arms carefully and watched the room over his shoulder. Nobody knew. The song ended. Applause. I walked directly toward the restroom, not hurrying, not urgent, just purposeful. Janelle was behind me before I reached the hallway. I locked the door, turned my back to the mirror, and looked over my shoulder. The lining was destroyed. Clean cuts along the lower back, 3 sections, the stitching severed in deliberate strokes. The outer fabric, the lace overlay, was still intact. It was holding up by its own weight, but the interior structure that held the bodice to the skirt had been cut through. One more spin, one deep bend over the cake table, and the whole back of my wedding dress would have split open in front of everyone I knew. "This wasn't from wearing it," Janelle said. She was crouched behind me, examining the edges. "Look at these cuts. They're clean. Somebody cut this." The same name came to both of us at the same time. Neither of us said it out loud. Then came the knock at the door. "Camille." Tanya's voice, low and steady. "I need to show you something. Right now." I opened the door. Tanya stepped inside. She looked at the torn lining. Then she looked at my face. Her jaw tightened. "I was backing up the memory cards and I pulled up the bridal suite footage," she said. "Something in the frame bothered me. I kept going back to it." She set the laptop on the edge of the sink counter and pressed play. The bridal suite, empty. The garden light coming through the tall windows. The timestamp read 10:43 a.m., 16 minutes into our outdoor portrait session. Renee stood up from the love seat. No limp, no careful movement. She walked to the door, opened it, listened. Then she turned back. She opened her tote bag, reached in with clear purpose, pulled out a seam ripper. She walked to my dress on the rack. She lifted the back panel, found the interior seam, and began to cut. Janelle's hand was over her mouth. I watched without speaking. My voice felt like it was happening in another room. She worked for 5 minutes, precise, unhurried. She knew exactly where the structural stitching ran. This wasn't improvised. She had planned what she was doing and she had practiced it, or at least thought it through, long enough to know how to do it cleanly. Then she replaced the tool in her bag, returned to the love seat, crossed her legs, picked up her phone. Calm as a woman waiting for a bus, the footage froze on her face, content, settled, waiting. I watched it again. "She planned this," I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. "She brought that from home." Tanya closed the laptop. "What do you want to do?" I looked at the torn lining of my wedding dress. I thought about the toast where she hadn't said my name, the whisper about Brittany through the back fence, the catering call, the dress photo, every small thing I'd explained away or absorbed quietly over 3 years. "I want Darius to see this," I said. We found Darius at the bar talking to his college roommates. I touched his arm. "I need you right now." His face shifted immediately. He followed me without asking a single question. Down the hall, into the venue manager's office. Janelle closed the door behind us. Tanya set the laptop on the desk. "I need you to watch something," I said. "Watch it all the way through the first time. Then watch it again." He sat down. Tanya hit play. The first time through, Darius didn't move. His hands were flat on his thighs. I watched his eyes. He tracked his mother's hands as she lifted the fabric, located the seam, positioned the blade. A muscle moved in his jaw. He didn't look away. Tanya played it again. The second time, Darius leaned forward. His knuckles went white on his knees. He watched her sit back down, watched her pick up her phone, cross her legs. The screen froze on her face. The only sound in the room was the low bass of the DJ through the walls. Darius turned to me. "She brought it from home," he said. "Yes. She planned this before she ever walked into that room." "Yes." He stared at the frozen image on the screen. His mother's face, composed and satisfied, looking at whatever she was reading on her phone after cutting apart my dress. 10 seconds? 15? 20? Then he stood up, and something in him had changed. Not rage, not the loud, explosive kind. Something quieter and more complete. The kind of change that doesn't reverse itself. "Last night I made you a promise," he said. "I remember," I said. He opened the door. "Darius," I touched his sleeve. "Don't yell. Don't perform. Just tell the truth." He nodded and walked back into the reception. The room was full. Dancing, talking, glasses clinking. The cake hadn't been cut. The DJ was playing something up-tempo with a good horn section. Children were chasing each other between tables. It was exactly the kind of reception you wanted. Darius walked through the center of the dance floor. He didn't hurry. He didn't weave around people. He walked in a straight line, and something about the way he moved made the room begin to notice. Janelle stopped mid-conversation. She set down her glass. His cousin Terrence looked up and went still. One by one, conversations paused. Not all at once. Like watching weather move across a field, the laughter didn't stop sharply. It drained away gradually, and by the time Darius reached his mother's table, the room was nearly silent. Renee was sitting with Reginald and 2 couples from her church circle. She had a glass of red wine in front of her, a fresh one. Her napkin was folded in her lap. She looked up and started to smile. "Darius, sweetheart, come sit with—" He didn't sit. He stood in front of her table. His voice was quiet and clear, the kind of quiet that fills a room when the room is already listening. "Mama, this morning, while Camille was outside taking portraits, you were alone in the bridal suite." Her smile held. "I was resting, Darius. I had my knee. You opened your bag. You took out a seam ripper, and you cut the lining of my wife's dress so it would come apart during our first dance." The room didn't gasp. It went still. The physical kind of still, like everyone stopped breathing at the same time. Someone near the bar set down a glass slowly. "That is completely false." Completely. Renee's voice was sharp now. I would never do something like, "It's on video." Tanya's camera was running the whole time. I watched it twice. The color left Renee's face. I saw it happen. Her cheeks, her composure, her certainty, all of it draining. Reginald turned in his chair and looked at his wife. He didn't say her name. He just looked at her with an expression I had never seen on his face in 3 years, and I understood that he had been waiting a long time to see a question answered. Renee's mouth opened and closed. I was only looking at the dress. "I didn't. You drove here this morning with a seam ripper in your bag." Darius's voice had not risen once. That was the thing. He wasn't performing. He was stating facts. At the adjacent table, Renee's friend Beverly from church set down her fork and looked at Renee. Not with comfort, with something else. Recognition, maybe. The kind you'd been pressing down for a while. Sherry, Renee's phone friend, was seated 2 tables away. She was staring at her plate, both hands flat on the tablecloth. The silence stretched. 5 seconds. 10. Nobody helped Renee. Nobody offered an explanation or said there must be a misunderstanding. Because the explanation was sitting at the table in a mauve suit, and she had run out of room to move. Renee did what she'd always done when she was cornered. She cried. "How could you do this to me?" her voice pitched upward. "At your own wedding, in front of everyone. I am your mother. I have given my whole life to this family, and this is what you do to me." She pressed her napkin to her face. The tears came quickly. The same tears she'd cried when I reversed the catering. The same ones she'd used every time she didn't get what she wanted. "Frank," she said, reaching for Reginald's arm, "say something. Tell them this isn't what it looks like." Reginald didn't move. His hand stayed on the tablecloth. He stared at the centerpiece. He looked like a man who had spent 25 years telling himself the story wasn't as bad as it seemed, and who had just run out of story. Then Beverly spoke. "Renee." Her voice was low. "We see you." 3 words. The room heard them. Renee's crying stopped mid-breath. She looked at Beverly. Beverly did not look away. And for the first time since I'd known her, Renee Calloway had no performance left to give. I stepped forward, not in front of Darius, beside him. His hand found mine. I let him hold it. The room was watching. Every table. I could feel 180 pairs of eyes, and I was not shaking. "Renee," I said. My voice was steady, not angry. Tired and clear, the way you sound when you finally stop pretending something isn't what it is. I've spent 3 years trying to earn my place in this family. She started to speak. I kept going. I reversed a catering order you changed without asking me. I smiled through a rehearsal dinner toast where you talked about Brittany Osee for 45 seconds and forgot to say my name once. And 3 weeks ago, I stood outside your back door and heard you tell your friend that my mother works at a library and Darius deserved better. The room shifted. A murmur, barely a breath. Someone at a nearby table inhaled audibly. Renee's face went rigid. I never said, "I heard you, Renee," word for word, through the screen door. I came to pick up the lanterns. The chair where Sherry had been sitting was empty. She had quietly gathered her things during the confrontation and slipped out. Her absence was its own kind of statement. "I'm not angry," I said. "I want you to know I mean that. I'm not angry. I'm exhausted. I'm heartbroken. I'm standing in this dress in front of every person I love with the lining cut out of it. And I am done being the only person in this room who keeps pretending it's fine. You don't have to love me. I have never asked you to love me, but you will not hurt me. Not today, not at my wedding, not ever again." The words settled. Nobody moved. I turned to Darius. "Thank you for keeping your promise." He squeezed my hand. We turned together and walked back across the room. Steady. Together. Not fast. Not slow. Near the service entrance, my mother was standing. Vivienne Cole. 61 years old, retired librarian, the woman who told me last night that today I'd find out what the test was actually for. Her eyes were full. She didn't say anything. She just nodded once. That nod held everything. The next 30 minutes were the strangest of my life. Renee sat at her table alone. Reginald did not touch her. He sat with his hands in his lap, looking at nothing. Darius's sister Nadine had come in from the hallway at some point during the confrontation. She was standing near the wall by herself, mascara tracked down her face, not moving toward her mother's table, not moving toward ours. Nobody went to Renee's table, not one person, but they came to ours. Beverly crossed the room and took my hand. She looked at me for a long moment. "I should have said something sooner," she said. She didn't explain what she meant. She didn't need to. One of Darius's work colleagues leaned down and said quietly, "We believe you, both of us. Just so you know." Janelle sat next to me and put her head on my shoulder and didn't say a single word. The DJ, reading the room like the professional he was, put on something slow and warm. The dance floor was empty for a few minutes. Then a few kids wandered out. Then a couple. Life creeping back in the way it does. Renee and Reginald stood. They gathered their things quietly. Nobody moved to say goodbye. Nobody blocked their path. They walked out through the side exit. The door closed behind them. Janelle was already moving when I looked up. She appeared from the corridor 3 minutes later with a garment bag over one arm. "Backup dress," she said, "cotton. No fuss. I brought it this morning just in case." Of course she did. I changed in the restroom. When I came back out, I felt lighter. Not just the fabric. Darius was waiting at the edge of the dance floor with his hand out. "Dance with me," he said. We danced and I moved freely. Tanya was at the edge of the floor. She caught my eye and nodded once. Later, I would text her, "Thank you for not looking the other way." She would write back, "That's what witnesses are for." Hotel room in Millerton, the morning after. I woke up and Darius was already awake, sitting on the edge of the bed in his undershirt, looking at the carpet. "She put it in her bag before she left the house," he said without turning around. She had to have thought about it, not just that morning, before. She thought about it, planned it, and went through with it. He pressed both hands to the sides of his head. "That's not a weak moment, Camille. That's a decision." I sat up and put my hand on his back. "So what do we do?" We talked for 2 hours. The room service coffee went cold. By the time we were done, we'd agreed on 3 things. 1. No contact with Renee. Not blocked, but no calls, no visits, no holidays. Space with a boundary, not silence with anger. 2. Darius would send a letter with 3 conditions for restoring contact. Acknowledge what she did without excuses. Apologize to me directly. Commit to individual therapy. 3. This was not a negotiation. Darius wrote the letter on his laptop sitting cross-legged on the bed. He sent it by email so there was a record. Then he called his father. "Dad, you know what happened yesterday. You saw the video." A long pause. When Reginald spoke, his voice was thick. "I know, son. I should have done something about this a long time ago." I told myself it was just how she was. I kept covering for her. That was wrong. Darius didn't say anything. He sat very still. "Tell me when she decides to change, Dad. I'm here." But I'm not pretending. Marcus hung up and sat with his face in his hands for a while. The good kind of crying, I think. The kind that comes when something you've been holding for years finally finds its way out. 3 days after the wedding, Renee responded to the email. Not to Darius, through Nadine. Nadine called and relayed the message. "Mom says you've been turned against the family. She says Camille has convinced you to abandon the people who love you. She says she's the one being punished unfairly." Darius listened. He thanked Nadine for calling. Then he put down his phone and didn't respond to his mother. 2 days later, Nadine called me. Different tone. Quieter. "I'm not defending what she did. She's my mother and I love her. But what she did was wrong. I saw the video, Camille. I'm sorry I didn't say anything sooner. I was scared of her. I told her she didn't have to choose between loving her mother and believing the truth. Those 2 things could exist at the same time." A long pause. She said, "You know what I never understood until now? Nobody in this family ever told Mom no and meant it. Not Daddy, not me, not Darius. Every time she pushed, somebody folded, and she kept pushing further every year because why would she stop? I didn't have an answer for that. I just said, somebody has to be the first." Small towns don't need social media. They have church potlucks and salon chairs and the produce section at Fontaine's Market on Saturday morning. Within 10 days, everyone who hadn't been at the wedding knew everything that had happened at it. 180 guests multiplied by 3 conversations each. The math is not gentle. Renee had been a member of First Covenant for 22 years. She was on the hospitality committee. She organized the Thanksgiving food drive. She knew every family in the congregation by name, and she never forgot a birthday. The first Sunday she went back to church, she sat in the last row. She normally sat in the 4th row, right side, and greeted people in the lobby before service. That Sunday, she slipped in after the opening music started and left during the final song. 3 women from the hospitality committee sent her text messages. She answered 2 of them. The third one she left unread for a week. That was Beverly's. She posted a photo on Facebook, her and Reginald on their wedding day 27 years ago, both of them young and smiling outside First Covenant. The caption read, "Real love stands the test of time." Janelle sent me the screenshot. I looked at the photo for about 10 seconds. Young Renee, smiling, standing next to the man she would spend the next 3 decades managing and controlling and bending toward whatever shape she needed him in. I put down my phone and went back to folding laundry. 3 weeks after the wedding, a gift basket arrived on our porch. Wicker and cellophane. Wine, chocolates, and a card in Renee's handwriting. "Thinking of you both. Warmly, Renee." No acknowledgement, no apology. Just a gift basket, the kind you send a coworker after minor surgery. Darius put it inside the front door without opening it. The following week, Renee called him. He didn't answer. She called again. He didn't answer. Then she called me. I don't know why I picked up. Some part of me that still believed people could change, maybe, or just the part of me that needed to know exactly who I was dealing with. "Camille." Her voice was warm and careful. "I think we've gotten off on the wrong foot. I think with some time and some conversation we can put this behind us." "Judith," I said. "Renee, I'm sorry." "Renee, Darius sent you a letter with 3 conditions. Have you acknowledged what you did?" Silence. The clock in her kitchen. "I'm trying to reach out in good faith," she said. "Have you?" More silence. "I think we're making this much larger than it needs to be," she started. "When you're ready to meet those conditions," I said, "we'll talk. Until then, I genuinely wish you well." I hung up. My hand was shaking. My voice hadn't been. Darius came in from the backyard. He looked at me. "Your mother," I said. "What did she say?" "What she always says. Just dressed differently." He nodded. He didn't tell me to call her back. He didn't suggest I give her more grace. He nodded and went back out to finish what he was doing. The gift basket sat by the front door for 4 days. Then I moved it to the garage. The chocolate melted in the late summer heat. We never opened the wine. 1 month after the wedding, Reginald called. Darius put it on speaker. He was washing his hands at the kitchen sink, and I was at the table with a cup of coffee, and I just went still. "I'm not calling to defend her," Reginald said. "I want to be clear about that." He paused for a long time. "I have watched your mother manage and control every person in this family since before you were born. I told myself that was just her way. I covered for her. I minimized. I apologized to people on her behalf without telling her I was doing it. And I told myself none of it was serious enough to address because nothing had ever gotten this bad." His voice broke slightly. "But it got this bad because I let it get this far. I should have done something 20 years ago." "I'm sorry, son. I'm sorry to both of you." Darius gripped the edge of the counter. His head dropped. "I love you, Dad," he said. "I love you too. I told her she needs her own therapist. She said I was choosing against my own family. I told her the seam ripper in her bag is not something family does." Something that was almost a laugh came from Darius. Almost. "Let me know when she changes," he said. "I mean it." "I know you do," Reginald said. "Give Camille my love." Darius hung up and stood in the kitchen for a long time, pasta water boiling over on the stove, both of us just standing there. 6 weeks after the wedding, Tanya sent the gallery. I opened it at the kitchen table. Darius standing over my shoulder. Hundreds of photos, golden and sharp. My mother and I in the hall before we walked out. Darius at the altar with his eyes red. My grandmother's window light in the church. The cousins mid-laugh during cocktail hour. And then one photo I never posed for, taken from across the room, a wide shot. Darius and me walking back to our table after the confrontation, shot from behind, my hand in his, our shoulders close. Both of us moving forward through the center of the room. In the background, his mother's table. Chairs pushed back, glasses still half full, nobody left sitting there. In front of us, the rest of the reception, full tables, warm light. Everyone who stayed. At the bottom of the email, Tanya wrote, "Your wedding was one of the most memorable I've ever shot. Not because of what happened, because of how you both handled it. You're going to be okay." I texted her from the kitchen table. "Thank you for not looking the other way." She wrote back 3 hours later between shoots. "That's what witnesses are for. Update. 3 months later." Our life found its shape slowly. We moved into a house in the Westfield Terrace neighborhood. Small place, 2 bedrooms, a porch we kept talking about converting into a proper sitting room and never did. We adopted a cat from the shelter. Black and white, deeply rude, named him Wallace. He knocked a mug off the counter the first week and looked us both in the eye while he did it. We kept him anyway. Darius started seeing a therapist in October. After his first session, he came home quiet. After his second, he sat down at the dinner table and said, "I didn't realize how much of my life went through a filter. Every decision, every relationship, even the ones that had nothing to do with her." Will this upset Mama? That was always running in the background. I didn't even hear it anymore. He looked at me. I didn't know the filter was there until the day it broke. Thanksgiving came. First one away from the Callaways. We cooked at home. My mother brought a sweet potato pie and a bottle of wine. Janelle came with her boyfriend, who we all liked more than we'd expected to. Nadine texted Darius that morning, "Happy Thanksgiving. I mean it. Miss you." He wrote back, "Miss you too. Coffee soon?" She sent back a simple yes. Reginald texted separately, short and plain, "Thinking of you both. Hope it's peaceful over there." Darius read it twice and set his phone down. Nothing from Renee. We ate at the kitchen table. 6 people, no assigned seats. My mother told a story about a patron at the library who'd been trying to check out the same book for 11 years and never once finished it. Janelle laughed so hard she spilled her wine. Darius cleaned it up without being asked, and Wallace immediately walked through the wet spot and tracked it across the floor. It was the best Thanksgiving I'd had in years. In December, a letter arrived. Not a text, not an email. A handwritten letter in a cream envelope. Renee's careful cursive on the front addressed to both of us. Darius stood at the kitchen counter and read it aloud. "Darius and Camille. I have been seeing a therapist since November. Your father insisted, and I eventually agreed. It is harder than I expected. She asked me questions I do not know how to answer. She asked me why I did what I did at the wedding. I told her I didn't know. She said that wasn't good enough, and she's right." He stopped reading for a second. "I am not ready to call. I don't know what I would say. But I wanted you to know that I am trying. Love, Renee." Darius folded the letter along its creases and set it on the table. We both looked at it. The way you look at something that could be the beginning of something real or could just be another performance. You can't always tell from the outside. "It's not enough," I said. "Not yet." "No," he said. "But it's not nothing." He didn't throw it away. He put it in the folder where we keep the things that matter. Our lease, the car title, our marriage license. We didn't reply, not because we were punishing her, because a letter that says, "I don't know why I did it," is a beginning, not an answer. And we had both learned, in different ways and at different costs, that the distance between saying you're trying and actually changing is measured in months, not in gestures. But she used pen, she used paper. She sat down and wrote something that couldn't be edited or deleted. And for a woman who had spent decades managing every impression she made, that was the first real crack. On a Saturday in January, I drove to my mother's house. She was in the back room sorting donations for the library book sale. Boxes everywhere, her reading glasses on, a cup of tea on the corner of the table that had gone cold hours ago. I sat down on a folding chair and started sorting with her. We worked for a while without saying much. My mother has never needed conversation to make a room feel full. After a while, she set down a stack of paperbacks and looked at me. You know, she said, I spent 6 months worried about who that woman was and what she was going to do to you. I know, Mama. But the thing I kept coming back to was Marcus, Darius. I always get his name right eventually. The thing I kept thinking about was what kind of man he was going to be when it actually counted. I watched her add a novel to the donations box. I'm not worried anymore, she said. I reached over and squeezed her hand. We finished sorting. She heated up her tea. We stayed until almost dark talking about nothing important. On the drive home, I thought about what she'd said. Not worried anymore. Not because everything was fixed. Not because Renee had transformed, but because the people who were supposed to hold were holding. I'm not telling you this story because I want you to walk away thinking Renee Calloway is a monster. She's a woman in her late 50s who built her entire identity around being necessary. Her house, her church, her son's choices, her family's reputation. She needed to approve everything. And when a person came along who didn't need her approval and wasn't going to pretend she did, that person became a threat. Not because of who I am, because of what my presence meant. That her son had walked out of the life she built for him and he was fine. More than fine. I understand that fear, the fear of becoming irrelevant. The fear that if the person you centered your whole life around stops needing you in the way you designed, maybe they stop needing you at all. I understand it. Understanding isn't the same as accepting it. What I learned isn't some clean lesson about winning. I never wanted to win. I wanted to belong. And when I finally accepted that belonging wasn't something Renee was ever going to offer me on any terms I could live with, I stopped waiting for her permission. Boundaries aren't punishments. They're just this. I'm willing to love you, but I won't let you destroy me. And I mean both of those things at the same time. The thing I'm most grateful for isn't the camera. It isn't the footage. It's Darius, a man who watched the worst thing his mother ever did and didn't look away, who walked across a room full of people and chose the truth out loud, who cried in a hotel room the next morning because that kind of love, the kind that requires choosing over and over, that costs something real. That's not dramatic. That's not a story. That's just a man keeping a promise. If you're in a situation like this one, you don't need a camera. You don't need a crowd. You just need one sentence you actually mean, and the person beside you who means their promise. It's February now, 5 months since the wedding. I'm in our living room on Westfield Terrace holding a hammer and a picture hook. Wallace is watching me from the top of the bookshelf with the expression of a cat who owns the building. The photo is printed and framed. Simple black frame, white mat, Tanya's shot. Darius and me from behind walking back to our table. Hands clasped, shoulders close. In the background, the empty chairs at table 3. In front of us, the rest of the room, full and warm and real. I hang it above the bookshelf. Step back. Darius comes in from the kitchen. He sees it. That's my favorite photo, he says. It's not even a traditional wedding photo. No. He stands beside me and we both look at it. It's better than that. It's real. Wallace walks directly under the photo and sits down. He flicks his tail once and stares at the wall like he's seen better. The wedding wasn't what I planned. It wasn't the day I used to imagine. It was harder and louder and more honest. But it was the day I stopped pretending. The day Darius kept his word. The day a photographer who had been doing this for 11 years and a small wide-angle camera gave me the one thing I'd been missing for 3 years. Proof. And a witness who didn't look the other way. The dress tore. The marriage didn't. And that's where the real story starts. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.